Let me ask you a question. Who's in charge of your health and well-being? I mean, who has ultimate responsibility for your health as you age? We're conditioned to believe that this is the responsibility of the medical community, since, after all, they are the experts. They spent all those grueling years in medical school. They did their internship, and they have practiced medicine for a number of years, and they have all of that accumulated wisdom. But here's the deal. These amazing men and women are for the most part trained and responsible for sick care and disease care. But sick care, disease care, and injury care only play a small role in how you age. In other words, they are only a small piece of the healthy aging puzzle. My guest today used a term I'd never heard before. In fact, I think she may have coined the phrase, and that's compliant aging. And what she means by this is that too many aging people simply accept that getting weaker, losing mobility, and becoming frail and unable to enjoy life to the fullest is simply a natural part of the aging process. We blindly accept the common narrative that we're over the hill or it's all downhill from here. And while aging is in fact inevitable, in large part, we get to decide how we age. And all of us would rather be healthy, strong, and vibrant as we age, as opposed to sick and frail. Hello and welcome to the Over 50 Health and Wellness Show. I'm your host, Kevin English. I'm a certified personal trainer and nutrition coach, and my mission is to help you get into the best shape of your life, no matter your age. We have a great show for you today. Joni Grant is here to make the case why we need to train to age. But before we get to that, I want to let you know that I have a number of free guides over at silveredgefree.com. There you'll find my top tips on nutrition, exercise, and lifestyle that will enable you to enjoy the second half of your life with strength and confidence and show up as the healthiest, strongest, most vital version of yourself, no matter your age. Again, that's silveredgefree.com, so head over there and download whatever you feel would be useful to you. Okay, enough of that. Let's get on with today's show. My guest today is Joni Grant. Joni is the author of the book Train to Age. She is also a competitive powerlifter, personal trainer, and functional aging specialist. But she wasn't always fit or strong. In fact, quite the opposite. She was weak and overweight and had never really worked out in her entire life. And then one day, a friend talked her into joining her in a CrossFit class. Now, turns out she wasn't a fan of CrossFit, but she fell in love with the barbell and began her slow journey from obese and weak to competing in powerlifting meets. Today, Joni is on a mission to educate seniors that they get to decide how they age. I started my conversation with Joni by asking her if she was an active child.
I was not, and you have to understand, my dad had a stroke at 30. So my dad had a stroke, my mom was a caregiver. Nobody ever mentioned exercise in my family. I rode horses, I loved horses, but I was a short, round, little introvert, basically, all through my childhood. We didn't have sports. I say that in the book. They started volleyball in my high school in, I think, 74, and I graduated in 73. And when we played basketball, we had to rent a gym because the girls couldn't play on the same court the boys did. Because, we might, I don't know what they thought would happen, but we couldn't.
Yeah, we've come a long way since then. Yes.
Yeah, I have no history with sports. Played a little volleyball when I was married, sand volleyball, but never, ever considered myself an athlete.
Gotcha. And so you mentioned that your dad had a stroke and your mom was the main caregiver there and that exercise wasn't a part of your family culture, right? And right. I would imagine that nor was nutrition. Is that fair?
That's fair. Yeah. That's fair. Southern family, biscuits, gravy, fried chicken, corn on the cob, homemade pies. If you love me, you'll eat what I put in front of you.
Right. And you'll clean your plate, right?
Yeah. Oh, God,
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're starving children. You have to clean your plate.
That's right. You can't get up from the dinner table till you clean your plate. That's exactly right. Okay, so where do we go from there? So you're this, like you said, you described yourself as a round, inverted child. What happens, say, after school?
I had horses. After school, I rode horses. And I worked with some stables. I like to break horses. So I was tough. I just wasn't physically active. And that, other than horses, that's pretty much my entire, on the, the President's Fitness, the trip around the track, that was my idea of hell. I was always last. Couldn't do a pull-up, couldn't do a push-up. So I was that kid.
Yeah. And so horses were your only physical kind of outlet there.
Right.
And then, so you're going to go on, you're going to get into your midlife years. What does that look like for you?
I was an AVP at an insurance company, desk job, high stress. And we had a gym where I worked, but I was terrified of it because I didn't know how to use the equipment. And when I'd go and give it a try, I'd be so nervous that I never developed a habit. It was just easier to get on a treadmill. So that, up until I left that company, I still had never, I think I was, I don't know, in my 50s when I left and went to another company. Fitness was not still part of my routine.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people listening can relate to that, right? When we're in the midst of our career and perhaps family, and I think you mentioned you're an AVP. And so being very busy, being in a high pressure, high stress sort of job, and our focus oftentimes is not on self-care. And to your point, I think another thing that a lot of people can relate to is that intimidation of walking into a gym. I know that can be very intimidating for a lot of people, and for females, especially so sometimes. But, you're talking about a corporate gym, but a lot of us, for the first time, I know I was in my 40s, I guess, the first time I walked into a big box gym, and it was a very intimidating experience. There were all these strong, fit people in skimpy outfits, and everybody knew what they were doing except for me.
Yep.
And it was very, very intimidating. And I can see how it would be tough to stick with that. And unfortunately, that deters, I suspect, a lot of people in our age demographic away from starting. And we'll put a pin in that for now because I want to come back to that, certainly. Okay, so here you are. You're in your 50s. What's the state of your health? What do you look like in rolling into your 50s?
Well, I've got the COVID-15 just like everybody else, but I'm in the gym 4 or 5 hours a week. I like strength. I will never be one of those cute tiny girls, but I can probably still pick up 220, 230. My goal is to be able to pick up over 200 every year as I age and do it comfortably. I don't squat a lot. It's just not my thing, but I do like deadlifts. I like the hex bar. I love kettlebells. Love kettlebells. Those are my thing. I kind of moved from powerlifting to kettlebells, and they're so complete. Their strength, their power, their balance, their core. I'm teaching some folks in their 80s kettlebells, and to watch their bodies connect with the movements is like I've died and gone to heaven. When you see them in that standing plank and when the bell's moving properly. So I've kind of gone from straight strength, because training for powerlifting competitions is tough, to kettlebells. And I really promote moving weight with all of my clients. Start where you are. But, if you can do a 10 and it's boring, do a 20.
Right.
Don't, So that's kind of where I'm at now.
Well, okay. So and we're definitely coming back to where you are now, but let's back up a little bit because I want to know how you got where you are now. So you had mentioned that you left the job. I think you said maybe after 20 years, went to another company. You hadn't been in a gym, or you maybe had been in and out of a gym.
Right.
But then you went on to tell us that, hey, I love kettlebells. I love lifting heavy things. I love deadlifting, and, maybe not so much squatting, but I do powerlifting. How do we get from being deconditioned and never having picked up weights? What was that catalyst? What happened that got you in that gym the first time to pick up weights?
So my mom had 5 heart attacks. And so and her sisters and her brother, it's a history on. So I'm getting older and I'm getting really nervous. So I'm like at 58, and a friend asked me to go to a CrossFit class. Not my thing. But I deadlifted, and it was the weirdest thing. I was like, I have to learn to do this. So I don't go back to CrossFit because hanging upside down from a box is it was just personally awful for me to start. But I loved the bar. So I went to a trainer. I went to like 4 trainers. I said, I want to learn to pick up heavy things. Well, do you want to power lift or weight lift? I don't know. You bend over, you pick up a bar, you stand up. He's like, well, are you going to do like weightlifting? I don't know. I want to deadlift. He said, no, you're too old. You need to be on the treadmill. I said, okay. So the next guy I went to said, no, you're too old. Let's put you on the Stairmaster. And then he turned it up to prove how bad I was, how much I needed that. So I finally found a bodybuilder. And I said, look, I want to learn to pick up heavy things. I want to deadlift. Here's the video. I found this video of women doing this. This is the thing. And he's like, okay, you got to give it 100%. I'll give it 100%. No whining. Okay. So, it took us a while. And then I said, I'd kind of been picking up stuff, conditioning. I was mostly on machines, plated machines, because he wanted me to build up some basic strength. And the whole time, I want to go back there. And he's like, no. We're going to do this my way. Have faith, So I said, I want to do the State Fair Powerlifting Meet. It's a push-pull meet. It's not a sanctioned meet. Very friendly place to start. I say things like that, and then I go to bed and I go, oh my God, what have I done? He says, well, okay.
Let me interrupt you there because how did you become aware of what a powerlifting meet is? And then maybe not everybody listening to this knows what a powerlifting meet is. So tell us, how were you introduced to that? And then tell us kind of what that is. So we have a frame of reference here.
So I was trying to explain to people what I wanted to do, but I didn't know. This was for me like, who walks into a gym and goes, oh my God, I have to do that? So I got on YouTube and I looked up masters and then I got to powerlifting and lo and behold, there are short, round, gray-haired ladies competing at the international level. So a powerlifting meet is usually 3 lifts. It can be 2 depending on how it's structured, but it's a squat, a bench, and a deadlift. And you want to get a 3-lift total, and you have to hit your first lift in each one. You've got to hit that. If you say you're going to pick up 180 pounds, you have to pick it up. If you can't get that one done, you're done with that lift, and you don't get your total. So, and I actually learned all that after I said I want to do that. And I'm not usually this crazy, but I had to do it. So the state fair is not a sanction. It's a nice, friendly, local Illinois state fair, 120 degrees in the shade, powerlifting meet. And it's 2 lifts. You can do the deadlift, you can do the bench, or you can do both of them. So the first year I did the deadlift. And he said, okay, we're going to train you for this, but we're only going to train the deadlift. And this is like March, and this is August. So he puts together a program. Yeah, it's not
a lot of time. Yeah.
Yeah, not for somebody that has just figured out what the bar is. And I did, and I hit 220 in the meet, and I sat outside that thing and sweated bullets, and I was completely like, oh my God, what have you done? But as soon as I got in there and we touched the bar and started warming up, I was good. And then people come up and they say, excuse me, but how old are you? I'm like, well, at the time, I think I was like 62. Oh my God, that's awesome. My grandma can't do that. But yes, she could. It's training. It's just training. So once I figured out that I was educating people, it became even more fun. That's when it really got to be fun. When I quit going, because I thought what is that old woman doing up there? Well, you pick up 200 pounds and that's gone. Now it's, how did you do that? That's cool. So that's then it progressed into 3-lift meets, UPA 3-lift meets. And then it's kind of moved kettlebells. That's where we're at.
That's fantastic. So I guess you got invited to a CrossFit class. Wasn't really your thing, but you were introduced to the barbell, specifically to that deadlift, which you fell in love with. and trying to explain to your trainers what you wanted to do, you've got to go onto YouTube and say, well, what is it I do want to do? That.
Yeah.
Powerlifting is what I want to do.
Yep.
And I love that you tell the story. I love it. And it also makes me cringe when you said my first two trainers, the first one said, no, you're too old. The machine,
Yep.
what you really want is this treadmill. And then the second one said, oh, no, you're too old. What you really want is this Stairmaster. And in fact, I'm going to show you why you need it because I'm going to turn it all the way on high and just intimidate you with it. How horrible. And how many times has that happened to seniors looking to get into fitness? And these are probably well-meaning people. They just don't know any better. They're ignorant, and it's sad. I just hear that all the time. It breaks my heart. The other thing I think is, as long as we're talking about just some bad advice, is you're doing these movements that very often even well-meaning medical community people will say, oh, you can't, at your age, you shouldn't be deadlifting. It's bad for your back. Or at your age, you shouldn't be squatting. It's bad for your knees. And that drives me nuts every time I hear it. Because of course, what you're really saying is you're surrendering, you're giving up the ability to bend over and pick something up or to sit down and stand back up unassisted. Talk to us a little bit about those compound functional movements and their criticality as we age.
Well, I hear that all the time. I have people in their late 80s that can deadlift. Do they deadlift heavy? No. But can they safely complete the movement? Yes. So especially the deadlift and the squat. When people say to me, I don't think I should deadlift, my doctor won't like it, I'll say, well, your doctor's wrong. And let me tell you why. Do you pick up a suitcase? Do you work in your yard? Yeah. And how heavy is that bag of mulch you pick up and carry over? Oh, it's, 45 pounds. Okay, so you deadlift. Now I'm going to teach you how to do it right.
Yeah.
I just am so, unless there's, and we do a medical screening, I make absolutely sure there's no legitimate medical reason. When it comes down to just fear of it, then we can work through that because most people are already doing it. They just don't know it's a deadlift. Everybody squats. Yeah. Everybody squats. You get out of a chair, you do a squat. They just don't realize they do it, and then they front load something, stand up wrong, and now they're hurt. So, and that it's just, I will argue anybody any day about why these functional movements are so important to your independence as you age.
Yeah, I would argue that they become more important as we age to have, and this is a very good segue. In your book, you talk about the compression of morbidity, and that's kind of a fancy sounding term, and I've heard that term batted around before. Let's talk about the compression of morbidity and what we mean by that and why something like strength training would play into what we mean when we say compression of morbidity.
Okay, so compression of morbidity simply means being frail for as short a period of time as possible. You want that period to be as close to death as you can get it. You don't want to be frail from 50 to 75. You don't want to spend 25 years like that. So you also, as you're aging, and you're losing strength because you're losing muscle. You're losing speed because you're losing type 2 fiber. You're becoming less stable. I don't really address balance issues because I don't know why your balance is bad. Could be meds. But I can make you stable, help you be stable. You're losing mobility and endurance. And as you lose all those things, now we're talking about the ability to get out of a chair, off the toilet, out of a bed. We're talking about falls and broken hips. And those things make you frail much earlier in the last third of your life. So I say this with all the love in my heart I can, but it's a choice. You can build strength and power and stability and mobility, and you can build up some endurance. I work with endurance with the kettlebells with a lot of my clients. And so now that time period where you're unable to get off the toilet or out of the bed or out of a chair is much closer to when you're going to die.
Right. We've compressed that morbidity cycle so that we're healthy, vital, and capable longer in our life. So as you said, in that back third of your life. Yeah, I think that's an interesting concept. I first heard it. Are you familiar with Dr. Jonathan Sullivan?
Yes, I am.
I thought you might be. Yeah, and he kind of describes it as what does he say? The sick aging phenotype, I think,
Yep.
is kind of how he describes that whole metabolic decline. And he has an example in his book of two twins, and one that takes great care of himself and the other one that does the exact opposite. And he just takes these two fictional people and runs out their timeline. One has this very compressed morbidity, right? I think he's hiking with his girlfriend in the mountains at age 80 and he keels over. But
Yep.
the other one actually starts dying in their 40s. And that compression is just dragged out through a pretty miserable life into their, I think, 60s, right? So that compression of morbidity is, I think, an interesting concept. And I think it's right in the very beginning of your book. You make this very bold declaration that you get to decide how you age. So,
Yes.
and I think that's not the common narrative, because really what's being told to seniors and older people is that's just what happens. This is just, and it's being told to younger and younger people. As people that are 40 that have achy joints or their back hurts. And well, that's just what happens when you get old. And people accept this lie and they don't understand that you do, in large part, get to decide how you age. You want to expound on that a little bit?
Well, you get old because you stop moving. I mean, it's pretty much as simple as that. And I try to be very clear. Yes, there are terrible things that happen to us, MS and Parkinson's, and there's all kinds of terrible things. But assuming you're basically healthy, if you keep moving, you can maintain your independence. If you focus on being able to have the strength to do the things you need to do, you let it go. It doesn't just go away by itself. You allow it to leave.
Yeah, and you also have a term in your book, I think it might even be one of the titles of one of your chapters. I think you call it compliant aging, right? That many of us fall into that unwillingly, right? Talk to us a little bit about compliant aging.
Well, one of the reasons I came up with that term, I think it's mine. I haven't seen it anyplace else.
I have not either, yeah.
But one of the reasons I came up with it is because in that chapter, I want them to understand what's happening to them. Because that's the first thing. They come and they say, I'm having trouble getting out of a chair. And my first thought is, yes, because you're not moving and you're losing strength and muscle mass. They don't know any of that, which is why the book is so thin and simple. I want you to understand that as you age, these things happen. And if you comply, if you just say, that's aging, I'm fine, I earned my 20 years on the couch, then this is your road. I can't make it different. It's going to have different time frames for different people. But if you choose to just accept that is your path, which, by the way, every country doesn't do that. We do it here, but that's not worldwide. If you're going to accept that, then this is what's going to happen. And the only person that can change that is you.
Yeah, that's right. That's putting that responsibility for our health and wellness right back on us. And I think that's also another thing, that the common narrative really that we're being fed as older adults is that doctors take care of us when we're sick and we have these symptoms. We go to the doctor and he or she gives us a pill or a surgery and makes us quote unquote better. Or as one of my guests says, returns us to the crappy baseline.
Yeah.
But really your optimal health is, because that's sick care, that's preventative care, that's disease care. And thank goodness we have those people, right? When you, like you mentioned, if you have a horrible disease or if you fall and break a bone, we want sick care and disease care. But really it's us as individuals that are responsible for our optimal health and for not being compliant in this aging, right? And for helping to be strong and resilient as we get older. So we've talked about strength a good bit here, right? You mentioned that you got involved in this through strength. You found a love for powerlifting. That's clearly a very strength specific sport. But I think that a lot of the advice that seniors are given is you should walk or you should ride your bike or you should do this low impact thing. Going back to that trainer, right? Who said, hey, no, you're too old. This is the appropriate exercise for you. Talk to us about the importance of why would somebody, let's say there's a woman, she's in her 60s, she's deconditioned, but she's found her way to this podcast. She's listening to this and she thinks, well, but why in the world would I pick up a barbell? That's what big, strong men do, right? I don't want to power lift. Why would she benefit from picking up a barbell?
Well, she's got to get past that's what men do. Yep. Because when you walk into a gym today, there may be as many young ladies as there are. We weren't raised to do it, but that's no longer true. That's what men do.
Right.
In fact, I've found that my senior women are way easier to get over there than my men. But anyway, so you don't want to break a hip. You have to do weight-bearing activities. And I when you've got the bar here, you've got the weight across your shoulder, down the spine, across your hips, and down your femurs, and you're compressing your bone. When you're standing up with a deadlift, you're compressing your bone. So not only are you building strength, but you're either slowing down your bone loss or actually building bone. And I've had experience with both of those in some of my clients. So you want to pick up heavy things so you can, from the strength, do you pick up a 40-pound grandchild? Do you carry in groceries? More than likely, you're going to be a caregiver someday. How much does your husband weigh? So I'm very frank, and I really thought I'd get bad feedback, but I have gotten none about my approach. It just is, I can't make it different. So you want those barbells and dumbbells and kettlebells to build enough strength to take care of you, your family, your bones, your muscles, and then ask any senior if their balance is bad or if they're unstable, and they will say no. Put them on the ground and have them do a bird dog, and they'll be like, wow. I'm like, yes, assuming they can get on the ground. Right. So most that say yes can pretty much do a one-legged reach, okay. But when you do a bird dog, that's when you really kind of see this to start to happen. So that strength training is going to make you stable and give you a stable core. So if you lose your balance, you can catch yourself. So strength training is just so basic to survival as an active ager. It just is.
It absolutely is. And I think some people may even be surprised when you say that they can imagine, okay, if I strength train, I get it. I'll build muscle, and I can see why that might be important. But they might be surprised to hear you say things like strength training will build, or at least maintain, but certainly can build your bone. And it absolutely does. I mean, That's been proven in study after study that we can arrest or even reverse, osteopenia and osteoporosis and things of that nature. And going back to that recommendation or that prescription of walking or doing light aerobic activity, while those things are wonderful and active agers absolutely should do those things and do plenty of them, as we age, we start to lose these type 2 muscle fibers that you had referred to earlier, these fast twitch muscles, and they're responsible for our speed and for our power, and they're responsible for our muscle size. And we're not going to build any of those by taking a walk, right?
Right.
And in fact, unless we're very, very deconditioned, we're not building any type of muscle by walking. That has different benefits for different systems. But yeah, I think that's surprising to a lot of people, that strength training is important as we age, and there's some very specific reasons for that. And I love that you're out there championing this type of resistance training. Now, what about, okay, so our example of our 65-year-old woman listening to this, she thinks, well, I don't know, is strength training, is that for me? When we say resistance training or strength training, we're talking about squatting and deadlifting and bench pressing, the things that you're passionate about, right? But there are other ways that people can get stronger, right? What are some other options for folks? You'd already mentioned kettlebells would be a great alternative.
I say start where you are. So, I try to make sure people aren't put off by barbells and kettlebells. Start where you are. If you start by simply placing your heels flat on the ground and you're sitting in a chair and you stand straight up, and then you go get a gallon of milk and hug it and do the same thing, that's fine. There's cans of corn. There's water bottles. Then you go to the gym and you've got dumbbells and you've got bands. Bands are awesome. Sandbells are great, and sandbells are great for grip too.
And now everybody listening might not know what you're talking about when you say sandbells.
Sandbell is a round disc. I think we have 2, 4, 8, 12, 15, and 20-pound sandbells, and they're round and they're full to sand. So to grab them, you have to grip. So I use them a lot, especially with people who are having some grip issues. Walk around and squeeze a sandbell for a while, and you'll feel the forearm and the hamstrings start to build. And that's one of the reasons why I say multiple times, if you can afford it, find a trainer. Because there are so many ways to train. If you don't want to power lift, that's fine. If you don't ever want to be on a squat rack, not a problem. But you still have to train strength. And you can start with your own body and work up from there.
Absolutely. Do you have any tips for somebody? Because as you mentioned, it took you a couple of tries to find a good trainer. I absolutely agree. People should find, especially starting out, right? Some of these, just to get the mechanics of these movements, especially if you're not familiar with them. What are some tips for finding a good trainer?
Well, I say in the book, the trainer works for you. So his job is not to show you how terrible you are the first time you get together.
That's a red flag.
Point out it's a red flag. Point out it's okay if he says, look, you don't look real stable here. This is how we can work on this. But it's not his job to fear you into training. I've had some friends, they're like, every time I go, he gives me the battle ropes and I hate the battle ropes and I don't know what to do. And I'm like, tell him you're not doing battle ropes. What's next? Yeah. You're in charge of your training. And if they don't want to listen to you, then you find somebody who will. Don't ever sign up for a training package until you've had at least a session or two with that person so you know, okay, this is going to work. So if they try to push you too soon where you don't want to go, pushing you is their job. But if you say, I'm not doing this, I can't do this. She's like, I can't do battle ropes. So she completely stopped training. They need to listen to you. They need to work with you, and they need to understand your goals, not theirs. What are your goals? Well, I want to be able to get up and down out of a chair. By the way, I'm really having trouble with my front stairs. I can't carry my groceries in by myself anymore. So now those are what you're working on, the skills you need to be able to do the things you want to do. And when you're trained like that, people just keep coming back. They're like, wow, well, okay, now I've done that. I think I want to walk Machu Picchu. Can we train for that? Yep, we can. We surely can. So in my mind, the best trainers are the ones who absolutely meet your goals, whatever they are, and then they keep pushing you for new ones.
Absolutely. That's very well said. And what you're describing there is that training for results, right? So
yes,
your trainer should absolutely understand what your goals are. And that might just be as simple as, well, I just want to move pain-free. I want to be able, like you said, I want to be able to get up and out of my chair without this being, a big ordeal. Or it may be, I want to walk. I want to hike up Machu Picchu next year. Get me ready. And they should understand that, and they should have a program or a roadmap, as opposed to just throwing exercises at you or trying to crush you with excessive exercises, etc. So yeah, I absolutely love that. Those are some great tips for finding a trainer. And certainly there's no shortage of trainers. Ideally you'll find somebody in person, because that's just, you can get that real in-person feedback in real time. That's the ideal. There's a whole bunch of, now that's a very virtual world, especially in this kind of post-COVID era. There's no shortage of online coaches as well, but absolutely, that's a great idea. What other tips would you have for folks just to get started on a strength journey?
Well, remember, that's another thing I put in the book, because I live outside of Chicago. This is a metro area. We have everything. I grew up in Farmersville. We didn't have anything, but you still have virtual training. You've got park districts. You've got major hospitals that have gyms that train seniors. You really have to look around your area and find what's available to you. And if you don't like it, then go to the next one.
Yeah.
Do it enough to make sure you don't like it. But if you're not satisfied, you have to find something that you enjoy. For some people, that's home in front of, silver sneakers in front of the TV.
Yep.
That's fine. That's fine. Lots of choices there. But you got to go out and find it. You can't just say, I don't like this. I'm not training anymore. It's not working for me, because you're going to still be getting older and losing muscle mass. And those are your choices. You either figure out what you'll repeat on a regular basis, or, just let it happen.
Yeah. And you bring up a really good point there, because what we're describing here isn't like a diet or an exercise program that's going to run for 6 weeks or even 6 months.
Right.
What you're talking about is a fundamental shift of mindset where you're incorporating exercise, in this case, strength training, some type of resistance training, into the very fabric of your existence. It's something you're going to do for as long as you can. And so talk to us a little bit about the mindset and the motivation, and how do we get from being that unhealthy and not feeling good state to kind of where you are now, right? Because a lot of that is, there's got to be some discipline, there's got to be some motivation, there's got to be some mindset shift. Do you have any thoughts on what it takes to go from, okay, I need to work out, but I don't really like it, to somebody who has that as a part of their life?
Start where you are. Be open to all the different things that may be available in your community, and including CrossFit. I went to a CrossFit senior group later that I loved. So look around for what's there. Be mindful of what you need and give it time. At the same time, be choosy about who you let train you, whether it's virtual or in a gym. And then once you think, okay, I kind of like this, and I like this guy or this girl or this video or this DVD. I mean, there's lots of ways to train. I think two different things. It's much easier, you've got to establish a schedule, and it's much easier to do with a friend. Because if you're only accountable to you, we all know what happens. But if you and your friend meet every day in your living room or at the gym or at the park, it's really hard to not show up when somebody else is depending on you. So, and the more you do it, the more you like it. You either have to love what you're doing, or you have to give it enough time you love the results.
Right.
So I don't love everything I do in the gym, but I really love the results.
That is very, very well said. Yeah.
One or the other. You don't have to love, maybe you don't love getting up. I have this lovely mid-70s-year-old couple, and they didn't move well for a lot of years, and now they're working on moving well, and they're so funny. John's like, I just want to be able to get out of bed and put my socks on, and some days I can't. And they work so hard, and sometimes they get sore, but they always come back because they like the results. They're moving better at 76 than they were 2 years ago. And so sometimes that's enough, So one or the other, it's got to be one or the other. Don't drag yourself through something you hate and then go home and blame them.
Right.
You need to go find what you love. Find
what you love, or fall in love with the results. And people will often ask how I stay so motivated to go to the gym, or do I love going to the gym? And, just off the top of my head, yes, I love going to the gym, but, there are days when I'm very unmotivated and really would rather not go to the gym, or there's workouts that I do that are grueling and they're very difficult, and it'd be really tough to define that as fun or enjoyable in any way. But as you're saying that, I'm thinking to myself, absolutely, what I love is less the work. Some days I love the work, but many days I don't. But what I really love is the results, right? And you made a very important point, and this is unfortunately what gets a lot of people, is you have to stick around long enough. I love that 90-day mark. If you do something consistently for 90 days, that's about when you can expect to start seeing those results. And maybe that's sooner, maybe that's later for different people. But a lot of people will join a gym, say New Year's Eve, or I'm going to make a resolution, and they go for 30 days and they get discouraged because all they got was tired and sweaty and sore. And, I didn't lose any weight, or I don't feel any big changes in my life. And had they just stuck around, or maybe had been on a better program or whatever, they might have, if they've stuck around long enough to fall in love with the results, they'd probably still be doing it today, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Well, Joni, as we're wrapping up here, the last thing I really wanted to talk to you about has to do with aging. And you talk about this, I know, just the difference between a chronological age and biological age. So chronological age is pretty self-explanatory. It's how many years you've been on the planet. But talk to us a little bit about the difference between that and biological age, because what we're talking about is trying to manipulate that biological age, right?
Age, yes, absolutely. So, you're right. Your chronological age is how long you've been on the planet. But then you have a lot of leeway with your biological age. Your biological age, how much muscle do you have? How much fat do you have? How do you move? A 60-year-old that can't stand up is definitely, and I'm kind of using this lightly, a 60-year-old that has to roll out of a chair and grab something is definitely biologically older than somebody that can pop up out of the chair. A 60 or 70-year-old that can't get up a flight of stairs is definitely biologically much older than some guy who can run up the stairs and run back down, even if they're the same age. So age really has nothing to do with it. It's about what you want to be able to do. And you want to be able to keep doing all the things you have to do to have a healthy, fulfilling life, regardless of age. Running upstairs, getting out of chairs, shopping, picking up grandkids, chasing dogs, getting out of bed. And the longer you do that, the more your biological age kind of slides down, while the other guy's biological age is going up.
Absolutely. That's very well said. And there is a drastic difference between, let's say, a 65-year-old grandmother who is very immobile and obese and has a number of health problems on a whole bunch of different prescription meds for that, and the other 65-year-old grandmother who's out performing in powerlifting meets, right? They are different biological ages drastically. And I think that in that extreme example, we can get a picture of what you're saying there. All right. Well, Joni, you've accomplished a lot. You've come a long way in a fairly short amount of time, right? You fell in love with this fitness journey. What do we say? Late 50s, early
58,
60s?
59, yeah.
58, 59. And here you are in your mid 60s. What's next for you? Where are you going from here?
I may do some kettlebell training online, but I really want to educate. I want people to, if you understand and you choose to do nothing, absolutely that is your right. Bless you. But I want people to understand aging and understand what control they have over it so they can live well. So I'm going to start another book now that I've got that one. It's basically Train to Age Anytime, Anywhere. And it's your movements, the squat, hinge, push, pull. It's those movements. Okay, you can do them if you're in a motorhome, if you're on a cruise, if you're hiking, if you're at home. I mean, you can train anytime, anywhere. Because now I hear, well, I'm going to train when I get back from Florida. No, you can't afford to lose those 3 months. Yeah. Here's what you can do with a set of bands in Florida. So the next book is Train to Age Anytime, Anywhere. And the first chapter is Now That I Have Your Attention. So, I want to educate. I want to speak. You're my first podcast, so I'm like a baby at this, but it's so important. And my experience, and I bet yours has been too, people don't understand what's happening to their bodies. They just think it just happens. And that's not true. Had I not picked up that barbell, I'd most likely be dead. 240, bad shape, bad heart, and I would have died not knowing I had all these opportunities. And there's not a lot of us out there having these discussions. There's some. I couldn't hand people the barbell description because they wouldn't read it. And I couldn't get them to read Younger Next Year, which is why there's this little tiny book. It's an easy read. Take responsibility for your health and move forward. So I want to educate. I want to teach. I want to speak. I probably will never be an online trainer. I love training in person. That's where I kind of get my experience, but I really want people to understand aging and what they can do about it, especially trainers and doctors.
Yeah. We need more voices like yours out there. I wholeheartedly agree. There are people out there that are shouting this message, but it's a small minority. We need more people, more evangelists. And so, yeah, I love that. And thank you for doing the work that you're doing. Certainly we'll look forward to you said Train to Age Anytime, Anywhere. That's fantastic. Well, Joni, you mentioned that you don't have an online practice, coaching practice, but how can people connect with you? How can people learn more and stay in touch?
Well, I've got traintoage.com. I've also got a Train to Age Facebook page. So you can email Joni at Train to Age. There won't be a practice, but I will be easy to find, and I'm available and I want to educate. So
fantastic. And I'll drop all that into the show notes so folks can find that there. And again, the book is Train to Age by Joni Grant. And I will drop a link to the book as well as Joni's website or Facebook and her email information there. Folks can connect with you there. So Joni, I just want to thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your personal story with us, as well as all your wisdom and your knowledge and your passion for this subject. And you're a fantastic ambassador for healthy aging, and I wish you all the best in all your future endeavors.
And thanks so much for having me.
Okay, folks, that's our show for this week. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation as much as I did. You can find all the links to the resources we discussed in this episode over at silveredgefitness.com/episode 94. And you can continue the conversation over there as well. I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments on today's show. As we wrap up our time together today, you can show your support for this show in two important ways. One is to tell a friend about this podcast and encourage them to give it a listen. The second is to give this podcast a 5-star review on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on, and be sure to subscribe and follow so you don't miss any future episodes. And don't forget to visit silveredgefree.com for more great resources. I really appreciate you spending your time with me today, and until next time, stay strong.